Okay, hi everyone. Just like I'd mentioned in my previous video, I wanted to make a video to explain the different types of microphones that are out there. So just like how I guess there's four main driver types for headphones and loudspeaker designs, there's kind of three main types of driver designs for microphones. So in audio for loudspeaker designs, I guess, there's really the dynamic driver, the planar magnetic driver, and the electrostatic driver. There's also a balanced armature. It's a little bit different though, so I won't really talk about that in the loudspeaker design. So for microphone types, there's also dynamic drivers. There's what's called ribbon microphones. And the last one is, like what I'm using to record, condenser microphones. So each of the three types of microphones have a slightly variation of how they pick up sounds. So in the case of a dynamic microphone, just like a dynamic driver, there's going to be some sort of driver assembly. So this will be your driver here. Sound will hit that. There's an induction coil made of winds of wire, and that is suspended in a permanent magnet. So this will be south and this will be north. As sound hits this diaphragm will move back and forth. As this diaphragm moves back and forth, this coil of wire will interact with the magnetic field, the permanent magnetic field, and it will induce a electromagnetic force. So your signal will come from there. Very simple design. Dynamic microphones tend to allow very large sound pressure levels to enter the microphone without destroying the diaphragm, just because this is so robust and it's very durable. Very cheap to make too. Ribbon microphones is kind of the exact opposite in that they're very fragile. They can't pick up very loud SPL sound pressure levels, and they can't really, well, I'll explain it to you later. But yeah, so ribbon microphones are kind of a variation of the dynamic in that they are suspended between two permanent magnets, north and south, similar to the dynamic one. But instead of this cone and wire going in and out of the permanent magnet, ribbon microphones will have a very, 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 very thin piece of foil that's usually corrugated so that it allows some extra durability to prevent it from breaking as easily. So this will be on the side, something like that. The ribbon microphone can allow forces from the forward direction and from the backward direction to hit the diaphragm. So as long as the diaphragm moves, it creates voltage in your wire attached to the thin piece of foil. And because of the magnets, that will allow the signal to be picked up. The advantage for ribbon mics, though, is that there's a very low resonant frequency, or a very high resonant frequency that's outside of the audible range. So ribbon mics tend to have a more flat kind of sound. If you've listened to songs that use a ribbon mic, they tend to sound a little bit more warm too. So people don't really use these types of microphones too much these days, but they are still around. There's AEA microphones, and there's Røde who make those types of microphones. And last but not least, there's the condenser microphone, which I'm using to record this video with for now, the Røde NT-1 microphone. So the condenser microphone is probably the most common these days. They're not very expensive to make. They're more durable than a ribbon design. They have a fairly flat frequency response, and they can handle high sound pressure levels similar to dynamic. But the downside is, and I'll get into this, so they'll have a piece of metallic diaphragm material. This will need phantom power. Usually it's 48 volts. So right now for this Røde NT-1, I'm using the Focusrite Solo to provide 48 volts of phantom power to this diaphragm. This diaphragm will be charged at 48 volts, and it interacts with a backplate that's made of metal. This backplate will also get a signal there, and because in this case sound will hit this diaphragm, it will interact with the capacitance between this charged backplate and this charged diaphragm. So it's a little bit similar to an electrostatic design, actually very similar. So you get your signal there. So the difference in capacitance will change, or it will basically be the signal that you pick up from a condenser microphone. And so those are the three main types of driver diaphragm designs of microphones. There's variations of these as well. So just like there's a variation of electrostatic headphones, which are the electret headphones, which are a permanently charged diaphragm. The condenser microphone also has a electret design microphone where it has a permanently charged diaphragm, so you no longer need the phantom voltage applied to it. So that kind of microphone, the electret, is actually one of the most widely used ones. There's also MEMS, microelectronics something something. It's a variation of a condenser microphone as well. Those types of microphones are used everywhere, smartphones and pretty much any small appliance electronics that use a microphone to pick up stuff. So of these three types of microphones, you can also have different variations of polar pickup patterns. And polar pickup patterns, like I mentioned in my previous video, allow sounds to be picked up from certain directions more sensitively than other directions. So for this case, I'm using a pen. If I open and close this in front of the microphone, you get that kind of sound. At about the same distance behind the microphone, it's a lot more quiet and diminished. So it's a variation of kind of sensitivity between the front and the back of the microphone, and also from the sides. So this is from one side, the other side, again behind, so it's quieter, and then the front, much more louder. So those polar pickup patterns are part of the design of the types of drivers that are used inside of the microphone. So the microphone capsule, which is the part where the driver is housed, the capsule really affects how the sound is picked up. So if you have a capsule, let's just say this is your diaphragm of any of the three designs. If you have a capsule that is attached to a closed space, this will mean that this microphone will pick up sounds in all directions. So whether the sound is coming from here, this microphone will pick it up. If the sound is coming from here, the microphone will still pick it up. If the sound is coming from here, the microphone will still pick it up. So the microphone is sensitive in all directions. That's called omnidirectional. So if you were to draw this in a polar coordinate space, which just means that if you have your source here, how will the sound be affected around the object? So in the center, there's your microphone. Your microphone will pick up sounds in every direction. Now if you have an open back, so instead of being in an enclosed space like this, you have it open. So this is your diaphragm, and it's just open. it can pick up sounds from both directions. So you'll get sounds coming from here, so this will be a positive signal, for example. You'll also get sounds coming from this direction, and this will say be a negative voltage that you will collect from that diaphragm. So in the case of the ribbon microphone is naturally this kind of pickup pattern. So you can see that sounds can come from either side of the very thin foil. Now, if you were to draw this in the polar space, so here is your microphone, you'll actually get what's called the figure 8 pattern. So you'll get your positive voltage there and your negative voltage from the other side. In the case of a condenser microphone, usually this backplate is corrugated, so there are holes in there. So if I were to draw this from the back, you would see holes in the backplate here. So the holes will allow sound to enter from here, and some sounds from the back, and some sounds will travel through the housing of the microphone where the capsule is. The capsule is the assembly where the drivers reside in. So sound will come from the front, hitting the front diaphragm, and sounds will go around the housing through the backplate's holes to interfere with the movement of the diaphragm there. So in that case, have your diaphragm there. You'll have a semi-open backplate there. So sounds will enter through here, and some sounds will travel around to the back, which will interfere with how this diaphragm will move. Because of this, you actually get some noise rejection from the back, just because you're getting sounds coming from the front of the diaphragm there, and depending on the frequency, it will go around the capsule through the backplate and hit it from behind as well. So the driver will get phase canceled. So this phase cancellation is why condenser microphones tend to have what's called a cardioid pattern pickup pattern. So this kind of a heart-shaped polar pickup pattern, where this means there are signals coming from in front of the microphone to the sides of the microphone and not really anything behind it. So actually, because of this natural design of the condenser microphone, you'll get that natural cardioid polar pattern. Now, if I were to talk to you guys farther away from the microphone, my voice will sound less bassy than when I'm closer to the microphone. Now, the reason for this is kind of the similar thing with the cardioid pattern pickup pattern. As I walk closer to this diaphragm, so let me draw some dude there talking into the microphone there. So as he walks closer, this type of diaphragm is, in this case, a pressure gradient. So as I walk closer, sounds will get more bassy because lower frequency sounds, they will have a longer wavelength. So let's just represent that as a low frequency sound. Low frequency sounds will hit this driver, but sounds coming from behind the driver, because low frequency sounds are a long wavelength, they won't go back into the back of the diaphragm, so they will not cancel. However, higher frequency sounds will. So we can represent a higher frequency sound like that. So a higher frequency sound will have a shorter wavelength, and because you're walking closer, that shorter wavelength does manage to go around the capsule through the backplate and hit the diaphragm. So as you walk closer, the lower frequency sounds will still be in phase, and so the in phase sounds will be the signal that you will collect and thus hear. The higher frequency sounds, they'll become less and less out of phase. So actually higher frequency sounds are picked up less as you walk closer to the microphone. But as you walk farther away from the microphone, the lower frequency sounds and the higher frequency sounds, they both go around the microphone capsule. And so all frequencies are a little bit more picked up more evenly around the cardioid pattern pickup pattern. So that explains the proximity effect and why you see a lot of singers on stage kind of talk really close to the microphone. It's to boost up their lower frequency sounds and to give them a more deep voice. And so that's kind of how the proximity effect works in the case of microphones. Now, if I were to tell you that there's only these three polar pickup patterns, I would be completely wrong, because there are many variations of these three types of polar pickup patterns. Now, there's a couple ways you can think of the polar pickup patterns. So I will explain one method right here because I have all three that are laid out in this order. So if you were to combine an omnidirectional pattern microphone, so say you have a microphone and it has multiple capsules to capture sound, so multiple types of drivers, kind of like multi-driver headphones, I guess. They all have their own types of polar pickup patterns. So in this case, for the omnidirectional one that can pick up sounds in all directions, if you have a microphone that has this omnidirectional microphone and a microphone that can pick up sounds from both directions evenly, making the figure 8 pattern. If you have a microphone with only those two types of drivers, you will get a cardioid pattern pickup. How? Simple addition. So if you have an omnidirectional microphone, it picks up sound in all directions evenly, so positive in all directions. If you have a figure 8 pattern diaphragm, so it'll only pick up sounds from the front and the back, but not from the sides. So these are 0. And you add them all up. What do you get? You get plus 1, plus 1, plus 1, plus 1, plus 1, minus 1, 0, 0. So you get plus 1 plus 1 is plus 2. Plus 1 on the sides plus 0 is plus 1. Plus 1 on the other side plus 0 on the figure 8 is still plus 1. Plus 1 plus minus 1 of the figure 8 is 0. So that's a cardioid pattern. In terms of mathematical function of two polar pickup patterns. You can have variations of this as well. So say instead of omnidirectional and a figure 8, you have omnidirectional plus a figure 8 that is positive in both directions. Instead of minus 1, it's plus 1. Now you'll get a hypercardioid. How? Plus 1 plus 1 is plus 2. Plus 1 plus 0 is plus 1. Plus 1 plus 0 is plus 1. Plus 1 plus 1 is plus 2. So you get something like this. You can also have a variation of even this. So say you have this one, which is plus 2 in all directions. And you have a regular figure 8 with plus minus. Plus 1 minus 1. What do you get? You get a hypercardioid again, but with a less sensitive back. So this will be 2 plus 1 is 3. 2 plus 0 is 2. 2 plus 0 is still 2. 2 plus minus 1 is minus 1. So you get something like that. Pretty straightforward to think about in terms of mathematical functions. So if you were having multiple drivers inside of a microphone, or multiple capsules rather, then you'll get very easy to calculate polar pickup patterns. So there was one, well, there are probably multiple, but I only know of one microphone that had multiple drivers in there. So it was an omnidirectional dynamic driver. So it was enclosed in a capsule, so it can be sensitive to sounds from all directions. And it had a ribbon microphone as well. So it was like the dynamic driver and then the ribbon microphone above it. So that would be able to get the cardioid pattern like this, the omnidirectional plus the figure 8 to get the cardioid. If you were to think about the polar pickup patterns in terms of condenser microphones, because condenser microphones is the most common, if you get a Blue Yeti, for example, or if you get a Lewitt brand microphone, or pretty much any other modern brand that has multiple polar pickup patterns, it's going to be multiple condenser microphones. So although this mathematical function makes sense if you have multiple diaphragm types, multiple capsule types inside of your microphone, that doesn't really make sense if you have multiple condenser microphones. So to demonstrate how polar pickup patterns work for modern microphones that use cardioid patterns from condenser microphones, I can demonstrate how those work here. So condenser microphone again creates a cardioid polar pickup pattern like that. So let's say we have one cardioid capsule. Sounds will come like that, hit the diaphragm, come around that capsule, cancel some of the sound coming from the back, and you get your cardioid polar pickup pattern. Now if you have two condenser microphones back to back with a non-conductive spacer in between, you can get sounds from this side and you'll get polar pickup pattern from there. Depending on, so this would be your plus 48 phantom voltage. Depending on the polarity that your microphone or signal processor will analyze these signals coming from the back plates, you can get different polar pickup patterns. As you can see, I just overlaid two of them right now. So depending on how you add or subtract them, you can get different polar pickup patterns. So if you inactivate one of these capsules, you'll get your single cardioid pattern pickup pattern. If you activate both and say both are positive, actually let's do negative first. So this will be your +2, +1, +1. So this will be your standard cardioid pattern pickup. If you have this one and it's negative, you'll have -2, -1, -1. So that will give you +2, 0 on the sides, because +1, -1, +1, -1, +2, -2. There's your figure 8 pattern. If you added them, you would get +2, +2, +2, +2. Well, what is that? That is your omnidirectional microphone. With two condenser microphones, you can get figure 8 pattern. With two condenser microphones, you can get an omnidirectional pattern. Now say, what if you had 3 condenser microphones? So you have one back to back like this, and then you have a third one that's facing the other direction. So let's just say this is the back plate. Signal there and the diaphragm's behind it. Phantom power there. What if you had that configuration with 3 condenser microphone capsules? Well, you'd have either this pattern or this pattern, and you'd have an additional cardioid pattern on the side. So if you were to add that to this one, you would get kind of an extended one. It's kind of like that. So that would be a subcardioid pattern. If you were to subtract them, so instead of positive, you'd have negative. You can have -2, 0, 1, 1 as your standard regular size cardioid polar pickup pattern. So it's a little bit interesting how you can add and subtract the different voltages that you get from your capsules, your condenser microphone capsules, and then you can create different polar pickup patterns from there. So something like the Lewitt microphones, one of them allows you to change the polar pickup pattern post-recording, which is very interesting. It will pick up sounds from all of the diaphragms, and then in post-production you can change which microphones will pick up positive signal and which capsules will capture negative signal, and you can get your polar pickup patterns after you record, which is a very cool microphone recording technique. So now that I've kind of described the various types of microphone types, I can now explain to you binaural microphones. So these are my binaural microphones. I usually have them attached to a straw, just like this. This is spaced at about the same distance as my ears. The difference between these types of microphones is that binaural microphones will use 2 of the same type of capsule. So in this case, there are electret design capsules. So they are a variation of condenser microphone. It does not require the 48 voltage phantom power. So it's a permanently charged metal diaphragm that's interacting with the backplate, and you will get your signal from there. So you get a positive signal from the right channel, a positive signal from the left channel, and because of the spacing between these 2 capsules, you will get a delay in sound. So if I snap my fingers here on the left channel, you would hear the left side first and then the right side. Because these 2 signals are being summed up, you will hear kind of a stereo sound, but with the sound being louder on the left side first. So that will create the illusion in space that the snap is coming a little bit closer to the left side than the right side. Now, since these are a closed capsule design, it means that they're omnidirectional polar pickup patterns. So just like this, it's an omnidirectional pattern for the pickup, and so it will capture sounds evenly from behind the diaphragm, then from in front and from the sides. So this is like one sphere of sound pickup pattern. The left channel is one sphere of polar pickup pattern. So combined, you get 2 spheres of sound that it captures from. Now I see a lot of people online who make ASMR videos, for example, that have 2 condenser microphones kind of pointed at the ASMR artist or wherever they're making sounds from, and they are spaced apart, and they will claim they are binaural sounds. Now, that's only partially true, because if you remember, condenser microphones naturally have the cardioid polar pickup pattern, which if you have 2 of them, you'll have like one facing this way, one facing this way. So you do get a inaural time difference between left and right channels if you're to combine the signal into one stereo sound mix. However, because the cardioid pattern doesn't pick up anything from behind the diaphragm, it is not a true binaural sound. So if I were walking behind the microphones, you would hear me very, very faintly because the cardioid pattern doesn't pick up sounds as well from behind the microphone capsule. Whereas if I were to use my omnidirectional binaural microphones, if I was walking behind you, you would hear it as if I was walking behind you, because these are omnidirectional and they capture sound from all directions evenly, and I am walking towards the microphones, and there's the interaural time difference between the two capsules. So the polar pickup pattern from cardioid microphones is not exactly a true binaural sound. So that's just something I want to clear up, because I know a lot of people are wondering what a binaural sound is. Technically, yes, it is 2 ears, and if you have 2 cardioid pattern microphones, that is like 2 ears, but our ears hear sounds from all directions, not just the sides and the front. So that's just to clear up kind of how binaural sound works. Now, I've been talking into the Røde NT-1 microphone right now, which is a condenser microphone with a cardioid polar pickup pattern. I can explain to you guys how that looks and what its functions are, and then I will record with the binaural microphones just to give you guys an idea of the sound difference. So let me set up everything so that you can listen to that. Okay, so now I have my binaural microphones hooked up, so they should be much more airy sounding than the previous audio that I was recording. So over here we have the left channel, over here we have the right channel. If I come closer to the left channel, my voice should not get more bassy, because these are omnidirectional microphones and they are electric type capsules. They should not have the phase interference that a regular condenser microphone has. And it should pick up sounds from all directions. So if I flip over the microphones and I talk from the back of the capsule, this should sound pretty much just about the same as before. And same thing for the right channel, should sound just about the same as before as the front, which I'm facing now. Facing now the front. So these are omnidirectional microphones. Again, they pick up sounds from all directions. So let me show you what my Røde NT-1 looks like. Put these down for now. This is the Røde NT-1. You can see it has this reflective dot here, which is actually Røde's symbol, but that indicates the front of the capsule, which is up here. You can see the reflective diaphragm right there. It's a circular pattern. On the back, it's open, so sound can come from here around the capsule into the back plate and hit the diaphragm from the opposite side to cancel some of the sound to get the cardioid pattern polar pickup. So if I unscrew this, set that aside, I can open up the Røde microphone, and you can actually see the diaphragm right there. That is the conductive diaphragm. Very shiny because it has to be metallic and it has to be able to become electrically charged, which you can see from the wires here. So this gold one is connected to the diaphragm. So it will charge the diaphragm with the 48 volts of phantom power. This one is connected inside to the back plate. So the back plate will get its charge as well, and the difference in capacitance will be measured from the circuitry here, and it will be amplified in the preamp, which is my Focusrite Solo, over to the left. So that's what the microphone looks like. Again, this is the back plate. It has the holes to allow some frequencies of sound to enter in and cancel out the sound movement of the diaphragm there from the front. And this is a capped on tape, so it's electrically conductive, and it won't affect anything else outside. And yeah, this is the Ride shock mount that I also used on my actual mount, which is behind the camera there. So that's my shock mount up there. So yeah, that is the Røde NT-1 microphone. That is a cardioid pattern pickup with a condenser microphone, large diaphragm condenser microphone. If you were to get something like the Blue Yeti, it has multiple smaller diaphragm condenser microphones, so it can allow the multiple polar pickup patterns. So that is my explanation of microphones. That was a long video, so thank you guys for watching. I do want to make a review video next, so stay tuned for that, and I'll be using the Røde NT-1 to record my voice on that. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video.